This meeting is being recorded.
Hello everyone and welcome back. Thank you so much for being here and being attentive all day. I know it's tempting to be outside and enjoying the summer, but you're dedicated to your clients' health and to being the best practitioner, and I appreciate that. So what you're going to see on your screen is something you're going to see a lot of your clients doing, right? You give them a great plan, they're all excited, and then they self-sabotage. There's resistance that comes up to actually following through on the plan. And when that happens, then they go down that road of self-sabotage. It's not necessarily their fault. They're not consciously doing it. They're not making a decision, but there's something that comes up inside of them that causes them to go down that. You may even find that for yourself. You may find that you personally know what you should do, but aren't always able to do it. And it's because of some of these resistance patterns that build up. So I brought somebody in who's a specialist in those resistance patterns. Her name is Laura Fine. She is a trained, marriage family counselor. She's trained in all kinds of energy modalities, and she's the founder of a technique that she calls subconscious cellular healing, or transpersonal energy healing, where it's actually going inside and helping people to unlock some of those behaviors, those resistances that are keeping them from doing the great work that you want to do. So I'm going to have Laura come on now, and she's going to talk to you. She has a little presentation planned to talk to you about some of the origins of these resistance patterns, some of these things that develop as a response for us to try to protect us from the situations, to protect us from what's actually going on in our life at the time, that are defense patterns. And when your clients get into this and they have different defense patterns that they've developed at different periods of their life, that's when they get into the resistance. And that's when you find that it's really difficult to move them forward. So Laura's going to explain these defense patterns and how they develop, and some of the things that you can actually do to help them to get through that and actually do all the things you ask them to do, all these wonderful protocols, and getting their hormones balanced. So without further ado, I'd like you to meet Laura Fine. Where is she?
Hi.
Hi there. How are ya?
I'm great. Thank you for that wonderful introduction.
Thank you for being here. I appreciate it. And I really am excited about what you have to share, because, the whole topic of today was strategies for overcoming resistance. And we talk about hormone resistance, all kinds of hormone resistances, and insulin resistance. But there's also the resistance that you so beautifully deal with, which is that energetic and emotional resistance. And again, it's like I said before, it's not their fault. So
Right.
I'm just going to let you take the wheel here.
All right. Thank you, Rita Marie. So I'm getting a really weird echo. I'm wondering if there's anything I could do. You're not hearing that, I guess. Oh, I think it just stopped. Yay. Okay, good. Okay.
Maybe Glenn had her line open.
Okay, great. So thank you for that introduction, and also for what you're doing, and for recognizing the importance of integrating this essential piece so that practitioners can really help their clients heal, which is what we all want to do.
Right.
So I'm going to dive right in, and while I think the first 5 minutes, I really want to ask everybody who's on the call to listen super attentively, because if you can grok these first 5 minutes especially, you'll really have a deepening understanding of what the struggle is all about for your clients and yourself with your clients. And then let me just tell you a little bit about what I'm going to do in our precious time together. Is I want to explain to you what emotional resistance is, emotional resistance to change, that is. I'll give you a couple of examples of it. I'm going to give you a quick PowerPoint, kind of walkthrough about some things that might be showing up in your practice, and then 3 steps that you can start to immediately use for your clients to help them through their emotional resistance. So how does that sound as a plan for?
Sounds awesome.
Okay, good. All right. So
Go ahead
what
and
is emotional
mute
resistance? It is an energy charge in the body that is in conflict with our conscious goals for our growth. So there's some kind of energy charge that says, no, 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 that's subconscious. When our conscious intention is, I want to grow, I want to change, I want to transform, I want to lose weight, I want to get healthier, I want to get better from whatever it is I'm struggling with. So that energy charge is what we have to address. So a couple of things about that energy charge. Our natural state is one of contentment and open-heartedness. That's who we are naturally. So, but when we have too much, when there's too strong of an energy surge that hits our body, that hits our nervous system, we go into overwhelm. And as children, when those first instances happened of that experience of going into overwhelm, if we were well enough soothed, we learned how to re-regulate our system back to a state of open-heartedness, safety, relaxation, contentment. But if we weren't well enough soothed, then in order to continue to function, we had to create what I call an energy buffer to manage the intensity of the feelings. We could call that energy buffer trauma. That there's some disconnection or some disassociation that our body couldn't integrate. So we experimented with various strategies, subconsciously experimented with various strategies depending on our level of development as children growing up, what was available to us, to have a buffer to be able to regulate the best way we could the overwhelm. And those buffers became habits of safety. Like, so for example, I had one client who grew up in an alcoholic home. Her parents were always fighting. And the way she coped with that was she shut down, basically. She shut down, she kind of went into a fantasy world, and she became a writer. In her adult life, she became a writer. But every time she's around anybody where there's sort of loud conversation or she's confronted with anger, she absolutely disconnects and can't remember anything, is forgetful. So she uses sugar. She used sugar to help her disassociate, to help her disconnect. So you might have a client who's got a sugar addiction or a sugar craving or sugar love, and we might at some point find that no matter what we do, we can't prevent that person from, knee-jerking back to that habit and pattern. So this became a survival pattern for her to cope with that overwhelm. Our clients become emotionally resistant. Here's why. When they are challenged, when we challenge them to push past these emotional buffers that have become unhealthy habits. So they become resistant when we're right up to that edge with them of challenging them to make a change. So when we get close to that tender territory, they will often escalate in their resistance with you. It's mostly subconscious. Like, I know I should have exercised. I know we went out to that Italian restaurant and I ordered gluten-free pasta, but I had to have one piece of bread, So there will be like some kind of escalation oftentimes. I was doing really good, but then I snuck this. So then that resistance just gets sort of bigger and bigger and bigger when we get really close to a breakthrough. So when we're in that tender territory, when your clients are close to a breakthrough, that's where you have to really proceed with caution with them. They're in very vulnerable territory, and oftentimes this is when practitioners will go into push. They'll go into you have to do it. You just have to be disciplined. You just have to buck up, and we'll go into sort of sometimes being too forceful than this tender territory can manage. And so it may be very challenging for us as a practitioner to figure out how to respond. So our job is to understand what is happening and how we can appropriately support them through that resistance. So that's kind of it in a nutshell, and I'd like to go into a little deeper. So can I go into a screen share here?
Absolutely, just hit share screen.
Let me see if I can
As
do
you know,
that.
does it allow her to do that?
Okay.
There you
great.
go. Yay.
All right. So, how to respond when clients are emotionally resistant to change. So they might turn their back on you, they might want to give up, they might get pissed at you, they might get depressed or sullen. There's all kinds of things. So what are the signs of emotional resistance? How are we going to recognize that? So here's a few examples. When my client doesn't follow through, like the example I just gave you about going out to eat. But when my client resists self-care, maybe they're a workaholic, they're constantly, nonstop working, and they know they should get more sleep, but they don't. So they're resisting their own self-care. When they go into attacking or blaming me. So this is a very interesting one when the client might come to you and say, I've been working with you, told me I was going to lose 10 pounds in 3 months. I haven't lost an ounce, and I've done everything you said. And they really go into attack mode instead of just continuing that exploration. We're up against that emotional resistance. They're up against their fear. When my client loses trust and doesn't tell me. So behind this, yeah, I really appreciate everything you're telling me, but something, they disconnect in some way from you, but they're not going to tell you what they really feel. But somehow you feel that. Underneath that, you can feel that there's something inauthentic going on. And they won't disclose it. They won't, what are you really feeling about how we're doing here? Oh, I'm okay with everything, but you can feel underneath that energy current that's not true. When my client gets overwhelmed, then hopeless, then apathetic. This is a real common pattern. You might give your client, 2 new things to do for homework. Say, okay, we're going to start you off, just drink 2 glasses of water in the morning and 2 glasses of water at night, or late in the, before you eat your dinner. And they might find that actually overwhelming. And you might think, well, what's the big deal? It's just a couple glasses of water. But for them, it may be more than they can manage, and then they get self-critical, self-judgmental. Oh, it's hopeless. I don't have it in me to change. It's never going to work, and then they get apathetic. When my client is stuck in a negative pattern, they might be, that negative pattern might look like excessive crying. It might look like depression. It might look like, I just get angry all the time. I yell at my kids too much. It might be a self-criticism pattern. This is one many, many people do, really harsh self-criticism around food, around, around exercise, around any kind of positive habit, or a lot of complaining. I've had clients who, if I let them, they would spend the entire hour just complaining and not being really productive in exploration of their time. So these are all cues that your client is in emotional resistance. So these are 3 big mistakes practitioners make when clients are emotionally resistant. So I just want to name them so we can just check to see, am I doing this? Big mistake number 1, over-analyzing. Not everything can be met through a lab test. Not everything can be figured out through just a new supplement. So that's big mistake number 1, overanalyzing and not recognizing or acknowledging or taking into consideration the emotional factors that are going on. How do you know? Well, you might find yourself talking more than listening to your client. Now, there are times when you have to talk a lot to, download your protocol that you want to recommend to them. But you also want to keep checking in. How is that landing with you? How is that sounding? Are you understanding? If you find yourself becoming cold and detached from your client, if you find yourself getting judgmental or critical about your client, or feeling like, they could do better than what they're doing, and maybe they could, but this is where we're in that tricky territory. Or you might feel stuck with your client, like, gosh, I've tried everything and I just don't know why it's not working. How do you know? You might find yourself getting bored as the practitioner listening to them. You might find that, wow, you might feel that you're not making any progress here with your client. And some practitioners are really prone to over-offer their time. That like, oh my God, I'm not doing it good enough for my client. They're not progressing. So let me give them an extra session. It's something I'm missing, so it's my fault. You might find yourself working harder than your client. So these are all signs of emotional resistance. What are the consequences when this happens? Well, we could miss essential opportunities for healing. Our clients could feel like they're wasting their time and their money, and they won't get the help you could provide if you just knew how to respond when they were in emotional resistance. So before we go into the solutions, I want to give you like a case study example of a client that I had recently, actually. This was a woman who was a doctor, and she had this like very strange pain in the heels of her feet that would be excruciating. It would come and go. She would never know when it would come and go. She was a doctor herself. She went to many other medical practitioners to try to see if they had any insight into what was causing this. She tried lots and lots of treatment protocols. She went for a lot of Ayurvedic treatments to help her just like deeply relax. They finally sort of decided it was just stress. She couldn't get to the bottom of it. When I worked with her, one of the things that that she came up with, that she shared with me, is that she has even though she, quote, knows better, she's a very progressive doctor herself. She's very holistic herself, and she's very much into positive thinking. And so when we talked about that, she said, I have a really self-critical mind, and I know better, and I know it shouldn't be like that, but I still feel these feelings come over me that are so negative and so self-berating and self-shaming. And so when we talked about that, we tracked that back a little bit into her childhood. And she talked about how when she was about 5 or 6 years old, she was sexually molested. And she knew all that. She'd worked on that before. But when we looked at it again, in this situation, in this scenario, we talked about how in the age span of 2 to 6 years old, children cannot tell the difference between the real world and the imaginal world. They're very much with one foot in both worlds. So this is the age where we still believe in Santa Claus. This is the age where we believe in fairies and in angels and all of those things, So half of us in that developmental stage is in the imaginal world, and it's completely real to us. And the other half of us is starting to be, it is also conscious. Like mom says, come eat dinner now, it's time for dinner, so you come and you eat dinner. There's research that has shown children have to be told to put on a coat until they're 7 years old, and they can tell for themselves that they're cold. So they don't have that complete developmental consciousness until about 7 years old. So what we hit on for her was that trauma that happened for her in around that age of 5 or 6 was never able to disconnect from this self-criticism and self-sabotage pattern. And here it was showing up in her feet. And lo and behold, there's something so magical about this work I still don't understand. But after that session, her heel pain never came back. So to this day, it never ceases to amaze me. So that's just one example of what can happen with this. So solution number 1 is assist your client to tune into your body. So how do you do that as a practitioner? You might be over Zoom with them, you might be in person with them, you might be on the phone with them, but you still can do this because most of my work is over Zoom, and I do this with my clients all the time. So how do we do that? Here are some tune-in techniques. Just start by taking a pause. If somebody's getting really caught up in being defensive or being critical or being complaining or one of those patterns we just talked about, or if you find yourself bored or if you find yourself feeling impatient with your client, let's just take a pause. And you and your client, even together, can just take a couple of deep breaths. And then if they are excessively upset or angry or irritated, just invite them to do a little self-touch. And self-touch can look just like this picture, just maybe some self-soothing. Close your eyes, take a few deep breaths, and just see if you can notice that you're actually feeling your arms. And I'd love to have you all do this while I'm talking about it. Just close your eyes for a moment and just notice what it feels like to just stroke your arms. And just feel the feeling of that. And breathe as you do that. Maybe your belly needs some self-soothing, so you could do some circular stroking with your hands over your belly. And just breathe and see if you can notice what your belly feels like and how it likes being rubbed like that. The other thing you can do is if your client is really shut down, they might need, or if they feel depressed or lethargic or apathetic, you might encourage them to do self-stimulation instead, which would be tapping. So we could just do some tapping. Tapping on the shoulders, tapping on the chest, tapping on the face, on the head. So try that too, and just do it with your eyes closed so that you can pay more attention to what your body feels like. And it shifts the energy from the head, from too much analytical thinking, down into the body and down into the heart. So take a couple of deep breaths and just notice what that felt like. And if you want to do any sharing in the chat while we're moving through these, please feel free about what happened for you. Well, let's go on because I don't have too much time and I want to give you all of these 3 solutions. So big mistake number 2, attempting to resolve emotional resistance with intellectual concepts. So just like this client I just gave you this example of, she knew very well that, she'd worked for years on her abuse history, on healing that, and she had done a lot of healing on it. She had done a tremendous amount of healing on it. But there was still a missing piece that was showing up, and it was showing up through redirecting the energy charge of that into her feet, into her heels. So we have to go where the resistance is in our physiology. It's not in the head. So we know better, right? You can tell your client, don't, like I love what Rita Marie just said about don't eat for a few hours before bed. That's great. So, but you might feel this emotional compulsion, and you can rationalize all you want, but we've got to go to where the energy charge, the emotional charge of that lives, in the resistance of that, to sometimes be able to succeed at what we know better up here that we should be able to do. So how can you tell if somebody is like that? If your client becomes defensive, argumentative, as we already named, non-compliant, emotional looping, excuses, yes, but is a really, you practitioners I'm sure hear this a lot. Well, why don't you try just, eating 2 meals a day instead of 3? Yes, but then I wouldn't be eating with my children. Or, why don't you buy organic food? Yes, but I really can't afford it. Why don't you try it? So if you get caught in that loop, you're in a defensive loop with your client. When you start to hear yes, but, yes, but, yes, but, you're really looping with them and you're not helping them progress, and you're caught right up in that same pattern with them. You also might find that they cancel sessions or avoid, or they start showing up late to your sessions, even though they paid for it. That resistance is really starting to rear itself up. So resistance is also actually a really good sign, because a breakdown or a strong resistance is the first indicator of, it's the first step toward a very big breakthrough. So don't feel bad when your client goes into resistance. It's actually a good indicator that they are actually progressing, because they're up against, the core root emotionally of what that their healing component, next healing component is. Okay, solution number 2, meet emotional resistance with compassion. And that requires an energy consciousness shift from both yourself as the practitioner and for the client, right? So this client that I gave the example about, was really in her head doing a lot of self-beating. So we had to shift into her heart. So when we talked about, what is this? I asked her, I said, you raised 3 children. How did if your child was in a lot of pain in their feet, what would you do for that your little girl. I would scoop her up, I would hug her, I would kiss her feet, I would rock her. I said, so that's the kind of energy we need to bring to you when your feet hurt. Not, I'm a stupid idiot, why haven't I figured this out? I should be over this by now, right? Which is where she was going. So we have to go from the head to the heart. We have to bring in compassion toward our resistance. This can be, it's harder done than said, right? We know logically, oh yeah, I should be nice to my inner child, right? But there's a lot of shame that can oftentimes come up, and this I'll go into much deeper in subsequent, classes and things. Okay, so I lost the. Oh, there we go. Okay. So how do we do that? We explore our resistant feelings. We separate mental beliefs from our feelings. So she had a good objective observer about her thinking patterns. She knew they were negative. And she kept wanting to come back to, yes, but, do a lot of the yes, buts. I've worked on this before. I've been to therapy before. I said, that's okay. Let's come back to what you're feeling right now as we talk about it. So we want to keep separating beliefs from what's the feeling right now. And again, if you have them close their eyes, put one hand on your body where the tension lives. Maybe it's in the head, maybe it's in your heart, maybe it's in your belly, maybe it's in a shoulder or the back of your neck. And the other hand, you have your client put on their heart. And just breathe into those areas and try to feel it. See if you can imagine that you're connecting the energy. And you guys can try that right now, even as we're talking about it. Just breathe and connect with energy between those two areas in your own being. Okay, big mistake number 3. You become defensive when your client becomes defensive. So if they're going to go on the attack, you're going to attack right back. Okay. So how can you tell? You might accuse your client of not being fully committed. You might make excuses. You might justify or rationalize their behavior. Like, oh, it's okay that you're doing that. I understand. It's all right. You might get irritated with them. You might want to avoid or cancel your session with them. It's like, oh, no, that client coming? Or judge them or criticize them. So this is also how we can tell that we are on the defense too.
It's hard.
So breakthrough solution number 3, just pause and observe your own reactivity and their reactivity. Listen to them. Repeat what you hear them saying. And this is a golden question I'm going to give you. What was it like to share this with me? What was it like to talk about that? So this client that I just gave you the example of, I asked her many times, what was it like to talk to me about when you were 6 years old? It was really, scary. I thought I was over it. I feel really emotional right now. I feel embarrassed. So just let them speak about what it was like to talk, and that changes the energy dynamics immediately. Okay, so there are 5 primary energy resistance patterns, and I'm not going to talk about this for too long, but
well, we're at a time now, Laura, but we can tell, okay. So we're at time, and this has been awesome, and I know you have way more stuff related to those 5 patterns that we can bring you back on another time to do.
Yes, they'll be covered down the road.
Okay.
Here's just a summary of everything we talked about, and you have a handout, I think, that I had sent. So I don't know if you guys have that or not, but if not,
Oh, we have that handout from the that other video. So you did go into the 5 patterns on that video that we did together, and I'll make sure I put the link on the content page for that. And there was a quiz, and then there was a handout. So we'll make sure that goes up on the page. Yeah.
Okay.
So thank you so much for coming
You're so welcome. Thank you
and spending time
me.
today.
It's always a pleasure. I guess there's no time for Q&A.
There's no time for Q&A. We have an hour left for this whole session, and I have a lot to cover. So I appreciate you being here, and we'll make sure that Yeah. Thank you.
If anybody wants to email me questions, I'm happy to take them that way too. So.
Great.
All right. Thank you, Marie. Have a great rest of your webinar.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
So Laura has so much to share, and we did do a video together. She and I did a video together, and I sent out an email to that about 2 or 3 days ago. And I'll make sure that the link to that video and also the quiz that she gave and the defense patterns that she was so beautifully explains is all there. So I'll make sure that that's on the replay page after we finish today. We have so much to share. I can't believe we're down to our last hour. Has this gone by fast for you guys too? I think I'm shocked at how fast it went. I have so much to share, but I really, really want to make sure that we get into the lab testing because I think it's a critical piece, and then the insulin resistance and what you can do for people with insulin resistance. So is everybody ready for that? Yes? We good? So this is a link. This is just a picture, diagrammatic, and I'm not going to go through each piece on this because it's in the handout. So one of the handouts I gave you was a lab testing checklist. And it has this picture, but it also has a long list. And I'm going to go through this. I'm going to mention what these are and when they will be important for you to be assessing people with hormone resistance and these chronic kind of conditions that don't seem to be responding to other things that you're doing. Everybody and their brother does fasting insulin. So we're not going to talk about the fasting glucose. That's just first thing in the morning, do the fasting. That's what medicine thinks is the way to assess for diabetes, insulin resistance, metabolic syndrome. And it's just one piece of the puzzle. And quite frankly, it's one of the last things to go, right? So it's not something that is going to give you early detection. Remember earlier we said that you can actually see there's patterns coming on decades before insulin resistance actually starts, decades before hormone resistance actually starts. So the other one that is done is the second one here, hemoglobin A1C. Hemoglobin A1C is kind of a measure of the average glucose over the course of the last 3 months. It's an estimate of that. And again, nobody's running it except on diabetics. Once somebody becomes a diabetic, then they tend to run that test. But it's an important one, like I said earlier, for insulin that should be run when people are very young. I've had folks that I've dealt with who didn't have this test run and found out after they had retinopathy, remember the damage to the back of the eyes, because their glucose had been high for so long, but it wasn't high in the fasting state. The other one is insulin, and I mentioned that before. Another one next to that is C-peptide. And C-peptide is kind of a kissing cousin with insulin. It's actually a measure of how well the pancreas is making insulin. Now, all of these are on a chart that's in the handout that's called Lab Checklist. And I've got them listed. So I've got this picture just to make it look pretty. And then I've got this chart that lists them, gives a description, and gives the kind of the ideal range for each of them. So it's really important to map. The top ones across the top are very, very important for glucose testing, for insulin resistance. And the one at the end, postprandial glucose mapping. Somebody put it into the chat. I thought I had showed you before. This is my glucose. That's my continuous glucose meter. It's called a CGM, continuous glucose meter. And I don't have to keep sticking my finger to know what my glucose is. I just have to take the app, hold it up, and do it. And I get my reading, right? It's really good, not just for people who are diabetic, but for people who have symptoms like that exhaustion that doesn't go away, hormone imbalances that are complicated, symptoms that just don't seem to be responding. And we give you a mapping of how to do that. I got another document that's on the page, which is a really pretty purplish color cover, and it describes to you exactly what postprandial glucose mapping is. And I also put up on the page a bonus under the bonus section, which is my chart, which shows you exactly how to chart the glucose. It's not just a matter of fasting glucose. It's not just a matter of 2 hours after the meal, like the docs will say, oh yeah, 2 hours after the meal, it should be 140. It's a myth. It's dangerous myth. And then the last one that's related directly to the glucose is something called glycomark. And glycomark is relatively new, And if it's for people who don't want to do the postprandial glucose mapping, you can go to the lab and it gives you an idea if you have been having high spikes of glucose over the last couple of weeks or couple of days even. So that's also listed in that beautiful chart that I gave you. But other things that are super important for hormone resistance, remember we talked about inflammation? Elevated inflammatory markers like HSCRP, highly sensitive C-reactive protein, and ESR, erythrocyte sedimentation rate. And I've given you the numbers in that document so you know exactly what they should be. We need to be running these on more people because a lot of people have these hidden occult inflammations that are creating problems and nobody's really looking until they have a heart attack. That's too late. We don't want to see that. Or until they have neuropathies or retinopathies from complications of out of control glucose. Super, super important. Comprehensive blood tests, and again, in that document, I gave you the components of that. We really want to see how is their liver doing because liver detoxification pathway blockages can affect hormone receptors. We want to see how their lipids are doing. How are their fats doing? What's the ratio between HDL and triglycerides? Another super important marker or indication for glucose dysregulation. The other things that are in there would be thyroid panel, and we talked earlier about the importance of a thorough thyroid panel. So these are things that are super important to be looking at, and what you need to be able to do is learn how to look at it through a lens of functional medicine, not a lens of pathological medicine, because the ranges that the typical lab tests do are sick or well. If you're out of range, you're sick. There's something wrong. There's some kind of diseased tissue somewhere. Whereas we're looking for functional ranges. We teach like a major course in that as part of our nutritional endocrinology. Another one is homocysteine. Again, an inflammatory marker. And we talked a lot about homocysteine affecting insulin receptors and thyroid receptors and other hormone receptors. So homocysteine is super critical. And homocysteine has been found to be affected in progesterone resistance. You'll see that if you actually read some of those articles that I gave you links to. Comprehensive stool analysis. Not everybody needs that, but if you're dealing with somebody with chronic digestive unhealth and they're doing a lot of good stuff to try to get well and they're not, that comprehensive digestive analysis can be excellent for letting you know, is there a parasite? Do one that tests for H. pylori because that can have an effect on the stomach acid and their absorption of their nutrients. So we've got to be looking at their microbiome. Not everybody needs it. A lot of times people can just do the lifestyle and the diet changes that you recommend and everything's fine. But when they're tough and they're stuck, I think that comprehensive stool analysis can be super important. Amino acid testing I don't do very often. I put it up here just because with the amino acids, they're building blocks for some of the proteins that we need for building a strong receptor network. So I usually only run amino acid testing as a later stage test if the person is having some issues with neurotransmitters, depression, anxiety, focus, in spite of the good stuff that we're doing. Organic acid testing is amazing. We talked about that earlier when somebody asked about the Krebs cycle, but it also tests neurotransmitter functionally, not like how much of this neurotransmitter, how much of this nutrient, but how are these pathways functioning so we can get a very educated guess. I hate to use the word guess, but indication that these particular pathways are broken and that there may be some imbalances in particular nutrients. Fatty acid testing is one of my favorites, again related to inflammation because it gives us a balance of our omega-3s and our omega-6s. And remember, we kept saying inflammation, hormone resistance, inflammation, autoimmune, inflammation, all of these things. So we've got to have a really good practice of looking at inflammation in our people. So C-reactive protein, erythrocyte sedimentation rate, homocysteine, fatty acids, those are all super important things to do. You can do nutrient testing. I'm not a big fan of doing it, again, unless we've done a lot and we're not seeing the results, I'll do like a Genova NutriVal. I just recommended somebody do that a couple of days ago just because of where she was at with this, or a SpectraCell that gives you an idea of what the nutrient status is in the tissues. And finally, the last but not least, and this ties in with what Laura was talking about with the emotional patterns, the ACEs score. Type in the chat if you've ever heard of this, the Adverse Childhood Events. And I believe that every practitioner should be doing this. It's a 10 questions, just have them answer it and see what their likelihood of having adverse childhood events that happened when they were kids impacting them still, like Laura was talking about with her woman with the heel pain, and turned out to be it was something that happened to her early on that just got locked in the nervous system and locked in the system so that she couldn't heal. So these are really important tests. In addition, in that handout that I gave you, I talked about the adrenal testing and the Dutch testing, which we hit on today. Again, not everybody, but because they're related directly to hormones, and adrenals and stress are so critical to get under control, to get the hormones under control, I think those are super important as well. So download that document, all the documents related to labs, and use them to create this process. If you are not licensed to order labs, you still can order labs because there's a lot of direct access. Or you can not order labs for people, you can suggest that they get these labs and they go to these particular companies that do it. I have an arrangement with one that has some panels up for me, runmylabs.com, and you can go there and you can send your clients there to order some tests, and I've got panels that I've put together. I'm going to be updating that as well soon. So what's the danger of normal labs? Like, what? Say what? How could normal labs be danger? The danger is the doctor, this is how they do it. Oh, labs look good. That's it. Nobody's looking at the ratios between things. Nobody's looking at certain things being low and other things being high, and that might indicate a B6 deficiency or a zinc deficiency. That's the stuff that you need to learn to look at if you want to master this area. Very important. And the danger is that over the years, those normal numbers may be heading closer to the abnormal, but nobody's really looking at that. Nobody's putting them in a spreadsheet and saying, oh, look, last year this liver enzyme was here and now it's here, but it's still normal. If you look at them in a different light with a different filter, you can catch people before they get sick, as they're heading in that direction, as their liver is getting stressed out, as their nutrient supply is diminishing. You can catch it when you learn how to read these labs. So these are some of the ones, this is just a list that I had done this from a presentation a couple of years ago, but that I feel like that are most commonly overlooked, that now you know about them. The inflammation markers we talked about, methylation markers. You can do a gene test and look at MTHFR and all that stuff, or you can also look at things like homocysteine and MCV, mean corpuscular volume, which is part of just a standard CBC. And you can get an idea if the B vitamins are off and do they need to be. The methylation factors are off because there's functional. Vitamin D is critical. Like, don't listen if your doctor says, hey, your vitamin D is 35, it's fine. It's at the low end of the normal range, but it's at the well below the optimal range. And do you want your clients to be in the normal range or optimal? I always say, look around, you guys. Do you see a sick population out there, or do you see a well population out there? Do you want to be average, just like the rest of the sick population, or do you want to be optimal? And that's where you can help them to make decisions about changing their diet, lifestyle factors to do this. The comprehensive thyroid I've already talked about, and I've shown you what the complete blood sugar panel is, right? The C-peptide, the insulin, the hemoglobin A1C, the postprandial glucose mapping, the glucose, and even the triglyceride HDL ratio. And the newest one on the kid on the block is that glycomark, which I haven't run yet. I've just learned about it a little while ago. So here's some lab testing resources that I actually have on your site. I think these are clickable links in your presentation, so you can click them, or you can just go to your site. I have that lab testing checklist I just told you about. It's like 4 pages long, and it describes all of these tests, so you have it as a handy reference. I've got the critically important lab test video and an ebook. It's actually about a 25 to 30-minute video that I went through and explained all of these, and especially went into the insulin resistance ones. The other one is a lab resources guide, which are labs that run some of these tests. And some of them say if you're a practitioner, you can use any of these labs. And if you're a non-practitioner, these are the ones that you could actually use. And then that's for the steroid hormone pathway chart. Remember I talked to you earlier? I kept saying, well, pregnenolone and progesterone, and it's a beautiful chart that you can be looking at to see. And that's the one, oh, actually that's the one from the Dutch test, all right? So these are the things that you can be doing. So I want to just talk about like what we talk about root cause, because a lot of you ask questions like, I have this person who has this, what should I do? And really for everything, no matter what it is, we want to be going through a specific process, and I call it my blueprint for getting to the root cause. So the first step is connect with them. Lynn talked about that earlier, connect with their why. No, it was Susan who mentioned it, getting them in touch with their why. I want to keep my vision. That's why I'm going to eat this way. Thank you very much. I want to keep my vision. Or I want to roll around on the floor with my grandkids and right now I'm in too much pain. Or I want to go on vacation and go to Paris, or whatever that is. Get connected with them. That reach out, that picture I showed earlier, that reach out across the table where they feel you and you feel them. Step 2 is creating a timeline, and I've given you the resources for all of this. We have a resource out there called the art of getting to the heart. For number 1, step 2, that timeline creation. I've got actually a chart for you where you can actually map what's been going on for them over time. And when you do, they're going to come up with some really cool stuff that they're going to tell you that they hadn't thought about before. And then the body systems mapping, it's a beautiful little chart that I have that you can kind of be thinking as you're talking to them, oh, this symptom could be related to this system and this symptom, and you just kind of map it out, and then you start to see which of their body systems may be most out of balance. But the other thing you can do to address that is I gave you some what I call scorecards. And so we're wondering which of their hormone balance is most out of balance of the major hormones, which of their organ systems are most out of balance. I also gave you neurotransmitters. So you can take them yourself, get a score, but then use those with your clients to help them to isolate and to see that, you know what, this isn't just about headaches. This is about a full body imbalance, and the hormones are really intimately created. On step 4, we're going to address nutrient deficiencies. And there's a lot of ways you can do that. I talked about some of the lab testing. You can look up symptoms for each of the nutrients and really get familiar. I'm really keen on this. We have a whole module in NEPT called the micronutrients, where we have charts and everything for each of the nutrients. And I highly recommend that you get familiar with that, because you can hear them go, oh, she may have a vitamin C deficiency because she's been under stress for 14 years, and yet this death and this loss and this job change, and you know, what can I do? I also gave you a really cool chart. It's called the Body Freedom Foundations Assessment, and it's probably about 12 pages long, so it's long, but it goes through how are they doing on the fun area, how are they doing in the rest and the sleep, how are they doing on stress, how are they doing with food, and you could just have them fill that out, and you get a sense of where you're going to have to spend most of the time helping them to get through this. And then the rebalance and repair, right? That might be the habits that you're going to help them to change. It might be some nutrients, some specific foods and recipes. And I gave you some tools on the page there with food swap charts. Remember we talked, Laura mentioned about resistance. Well, they're not going to go from here to all the way over here, but they'll do good, better, best. And that was inspired by one of our coaches, Tony, who just, you can't get them to go to best if they're just at crappy, right? You can get them to go to good, right? Make changes, and it's a beautiful 2-page chart that gives you some ideas as you're coaching with them. I wouldn't just hand them that chart. I would use that chart to coach them through the process. And then functional testing, we talked about that. Like, which of those functional tests do you really feel like they need based on all the information you've been gathering? And here's the piece that most people miss. You've got to reassess regularly. You can't just say, oh, well, we have an adrenal imbalance and we have a thyroid imbalance. Here's some supplements, here's a diet, come back in 3 months and let's see. Like, you got to help them. You got to ask them questions. So the reassess is asking questions about how things are going, redoing the scorecards, and then redoing the assessments. Even though they cost money, if you don't redo them, you don't know if the program you put them on even helped. And that's what I see a lot when people started coming to me after they've been to a lot of folks. It's like, oh, they're never even reassessing. What do you mean you did this adrenal test before? Oh, and what happened? Oh, they put me on rhodiola and ashwagandha, and great. How did that go? Well, I took it for about 3 months. So I don't know how it went. Like, what do you mean you don't know how it went? Did you go back and redo the test? Oh, no, they didn't tell me to. And you just took it for 3 months. Did you just stop? Yeah, they said take it for 3 months and you're done. That's not practicing properly. That's not being a really good coach, doctor, acupuncturist, whatever is your license. That's in my opinion, that's negligence. You've got to keep people on track and see how you can shift things. So I call this the complex case solving blueprint. You've got that document there, but it's basically, I have 7 phases and you got to do them really pretty much in order unless they're fine on a step. So you have to look at their basic foundational principles, which I've mentioned and I've given you a quiz for, and I'll show you the picture of that. And then you've got to then say, okay, got those. While you're working on those, then you can look and say, does this person have a digestion issue? Does this person have a blood sugar issue? Those are the core things, because if you don't address their blood sugar and their digestion, you'll never get their thyroid to really balance. They'll just have temporary solutions and symptom relief. So you go through the digestion, blood sugar, adrenals, but the stress, you're actually addressing that in the first one because stress is part of that. So the adrenals might be fine by the time you get their stress managed. And if not, then there's, maybe some foods and herbs and recipes. And I've given you a lot of resources that you can use for that. Thyroid, sex hormones, and then you get back into other stuff. Now, if this person just had bypass surgery, and there's things you can do from a food and nutrition and herbal standpoint to strengthen up their heart while they're working on this, more power. Like, do it, right? Get them relief, but don't just give them relief and send them on their way with a medication or an herb prescription that doesn't really address the root cause. Got to address the root cause. So this is a chart I gave you, and you can take them through. It has the pillars I came up with are, they spell the word freedom: fun, restful sleep, exercise, environment, diet, outlook, and mindfulness. And you can find out where they are on those scales and where you need to be focusing some of your great resources. And I'm sure all of you have some kind of stress resources that you either do yourself or you like to share with your clients. I share with you what mine are. But this is great, and this is something you should take for yourself too, because a lot of times we fall short on our own self-care. And how can you be there for them if you don't take care of you? So that's the lab testing. That's the assessment piece that I think is so critical before we jump in on what do I do about X? What's going on and what's causing X? And that's how you do it. But I really want to focus on insulin resistance because it's king, queen of the hormone resistances, and I want to go a little deeper with it and give you some things you can do. Because remember, with all those charts we looked at with the hormone resistance, insulin, high levels of insulin resistance was on just about every one of them. So if we can get control of the insulin hormones, and we do it with ways that also balance the gut, that's 2 for the price of 1, then you're going to be really like that person who shines. We had a person recently who joined our Sweet Spot program, and she's 78 years old, and she started out diabetic but refused to go on medication, wanted to handle it herself. Daughter was kind of freaked out that she had her blood sugars in the 160s to 180s, sometimes over 200 as a fasting glucose, but wasn't on any medication. So her daughter actually signed her up for the program as a Mother's Day gift. She is amazing, and she has in this last, she did this play around, and now she's about 3 weeks in. Yeah, 3 weeks into what we call our metabolic reset, and I'll tell you, because that's part of what I'm going to share with you as to how you should be approaching these folks. And she's now had, her blood sugars are in the 80s and 90s sometimes, and on a bad day, her postprandial, her after eating, goes as high as like 118 on some days. Major improvements, and her attitude is great. She's grateful, and that's what's part of this. The healing process is teaching people to be grateful, teaching people to trust their bodies. So that's the insulin we talked about. There's the way it happens, insulin resistance, but the muscle cells become resistant when they're not trained, which is why exercise is such a critical piece of it. So this is the spectrum I keep talking about. So we start out early on, asymptomatic, just unbeknownst to us, we're producing too much insulin. And there's a lot of folks running around like that are creating the damage. All those things I showed you earlier with the hormone interactions, the things affected to cancer cells, the things affected to the endothelial lining, endometrial too. And then they go to reactive hypoglycemia. And then they may not everybody goes through that, but they may notice that sometimes they have blood sugar dips. It's because they're making too much insulin. Then they go into what I call pre-insulin resistance. And my postprandial glucose mapping is what you need to use to determine if somebody's in pre-insulin resistance. Then they get diagnosable at insulin resistance, where blood sugar fasting is over 100 on 3 separate occasions. They may have some other symptoms, but when they get into also having lipid abnormalities, high cholesterol, high triglycerides, low HDLs, then they're in metabolic syndrome. And then finally diabetes. This isn't a path I want to go down. This isn't a path I want to look at myself. I'm in this stage right here. And I ain't planning to ever go past it, because I know that I'm in that stage because I have a lot of genes towards it, and I have to be really careful. But I'm fine. I'm fine being there and being careful about what I eat, because I don't want to go down that other path. It's ugly. There are people who find themselves in this insulin resistant stage and they haven't been diagnosed, or their doctor says, yeah, come back in 6 months. Meanwhile, their A1C is high enough that they're already having the retinal damages. And that's why I wanted to show you. These are some of the early symptoms. They have the extra belly fat, they're low energy, they can't focus, they have these dips after they eat, they feel more hungry, they have cravings. That's just the early symptoms. And those are just the tip of the iceberg. Just the tip of the iceberg. So if people are suffering from that, you don't want to just send them on their merry way and give them a few herbs and give them a few adaptogens. You want to address this and determine if this is the tip of the iceberg for other stuff. This is the complications that happen with insulin resistance, and it happens without us knowing it. I believe this is what happened and why my parents both had very early heart attacks. Because now that I know we have the genes for this, I look at what they were doing, and they were on this path. They didn't have diagnosed heart disease, but they had all this other stuff going on. So you've got to be able to recognize this early on, right? You can get cancers as a result. We talked about why in that earlier slide. It's a dangerous myth that only diabetics need to worry about this. It's a dangerous myth that only diabetics need to run their A1Cs or their insulins, because we're missing them in that 30-year window where we could be helping them and preventing these crisis situations. So I think it's really important. So we look at insulin and the brain. The old thinking was the brain doesn't need insulin. The brain is so important that it can just suck up that sugar from the blood and it doesn't need insulin. And now we know that insulin plays a significant role in the brain. In fact, we're even talking about the Alzheimer's being like type 3 diabetes. The Alzheimer's is actually insulin resistance of the brain. And these are the areas we know that there are insulin receptors in, and these are areas that become resistant. The hypothalamus, is that important or what? What did we say that was? Right? That's the master controller. The cerebellum, that's back here, that's balance, like the drunken sailor type of thing. We need to have balance. We need to be able to walk around. The hippocampus, that's a part with the short-term memory. And the cortex, the adrenal, cortex, the prefrontal cortex. These are all critical parts of the brain that rely on insulin. And if you're not addressing this with people and helping people to reverse this insulin resistance before it gets there, they're going to have brain issues. We think that it's normal that people as they age get, they need canes and they need walkers to stabilize themselves. No, it's damage to their cerebellum. We can prevent that when we address this early on. I think you need to. Blood sugars over 100 have been shown to cause damage. Blood sugars over 100, not 140 like they're saying, 100. And they're damaging the beta cells in the pancreas. And every little increment, it's really important that we affect this. The more it rose, even within the normal range, the more beta cell damage they saw. The same thing with the eyes. Of all the people they found with these diabetic retinopathies, 60% more had fasting glucose below 126. And that's when they start to diagnose them and tell them they have a problem. They had it, 60% of them already had it before they got diagnosed as diabetic. That's huge. And 7.4 had glucose below 100. And if you're from a different country, 5.6 is on there. So the interpretation. This is critical. We don't want people to get this stuff happening because once it happens, it may not be reversible. May not be reversible. So this is how people respond in insulin resistance. And what we want to do is restore this back to how they should respond. So they eat and their glucose rises and the pancreas secretes insulin. And what's supposed to happen is the pancreas secretes insulin, the insulin carries the sugar into the cells, they have nice energy, and a few hours later they get hungry again and eat. But no, the cells are resistant, so the sugar stays high. The pancreas secretes more insulin. Remember the chart, the dangers of insulin, right? So now we have more, higher risk of cancer, higher risk of heart disease, higher risk of other hormone imbalances. And it keeps secreting more and more until finally that excess sugar gets triggered to be stored as fat, usually right here. And not just right here in the exterior, but underneath, around the organs, called visceral fat. And that's the dangerous stuff. And that stuff, that fat, secretes C-reactive protein, which then damages the vessels further. So we get into this cycle where people are killing themselves with every forkful. And we need to reverse it. We totally need to reverse it. So I believe that everybody should be doing at-home testing. There's a picture there of my little continuous, and then this is a meter called the Keto Mojo. Kind of like the Keto Mojo because it does glucose and ketones, and we don't have time to get into ketones today, but that's a huge piece of the picture. Not everybody, well, I won't get into it because the butter bacon version of keto is not what I'm after, but getting people into a mild nutritional ketosis can be super helpful in this whole thing. So it's a myth that doctors are telling their diabetics, oh, you're well controlled. As long as 2 hours after you eat, your glucose doesn't go above 140. 140? I'm saying it should never go to 140, let alone 2 hours after they eat. It should be back down to baseline. So it's a myth, and it's a dangerous myth. There's another test you can do when you have the insulin and the glucose. It's called the HOMA, and I've got a link. Well, you just look this one up and I have the chart. So you just calculate it from the insulin and the glucose, and you have this number that gives you what's your risk. So it's a pretty good number to keep going and keep testing on. The last thing I want to mention in relationship to this is I mention it because we talked a lot about inflammation today, right? We talked a lot about the autoimmune, and we think that just type 1 diabetes is autoimmune. More and more research is actually showing that type 2 diabetes has an autoimmune component. In fact, I'm going to be teaching at a conference in November, and I'm going to teach on that topic, the autoimmune component of diabetes, the little recognized autoimmune component. I have tons of references for that, but it's frequently misdiagnosed. So I want you to be aware of this when you see somebody who comes in and they say they're type 2 diabetic, and they're on metformin and maybe some other medications, and the doctor's saying, we don't know, we're gonna have to put you on insulin. But they're kind of skinny, and they don't look the part of a type 2 diabetic. I had somebody come in like this, and I ran some tests. And these are all listed in that document I gave you. I ran the insulin antibodies, I ran the pancreas antibodies, the islet cell antibodies, I ran C-peptide, and I ran GAD antibodies. And I can't remember which, but he had 2 of those were elevated, which said to me he had an autoimmune, and he was not type 2 diabetic. He wasn't really type 1. They're calling it latent autoimmune diabetes in adults, type 1.5. So now we have type 1 diabetes, which is autoimmune, usually early onset. We have type 2 diabetes, which is insulin resistance, but we have type 1.5, which is this LADA, this late onset autoimmune. And then we have type 3 diabetes, which is what we're calling Alzheimer's. So this is critical. This is affecting brain, this is affecting immune system, this is affecting everything, and we need to get this under control. These are just some charts that show what it should be like, and the bottom one is insulin and the top one is glucose, and they curve and they peak at around the same places. There's a few foods though that cause the insulin to peak without the blood sugar, and those are ones I want you to be aware of. One is whey, and the other is whey protein. So in dairy, causes the insulin to go up, but not the glucose. So you're getting all the bad stuff about high insulin without even knowing it, because it's not going to be picked up in your meter, because we can't test insulin with our meters, right? So we have to be careful about that. And so if you look at this, you know, a really healthy person is at that low end. They're not going much above 100 at a peak. That's where we try to keep people, below 110. This is like, you know, all different graphs. You can look at these in more depth later, but I just gave you these to have some reference to what this should look like. It should be, you know, this green at the lower end. Once you get into that green at the higher end, you're starting to get into that insulin resistance. The others are actually diabetes and insulin resistance. So what are you gonna do about it? You're all wondering, what am I gonna do about this? I've got this problem myself. Maybe I have this problem myself, and I wanna work with clients on it. So I'm giving you a 4-step plan. Step 1 is education and testing. You educate, you learn about it yourself, you educate people about how this works, and you just start testing. You either get a continuous or you get a keto mojo, and you use my graph that I gave you and you map all this out and you go, whoa, I'm having a problem. I discovered pineapple made my sugar go up to 167, and I was eating pineapple several times a week. Right? That wasn't good, especially with a family history of people dropping dead of heart attacks at young ages. And that like woke me up big time. You've also got the next phase, which I call the 30-day insulin receptor metabolic reset. That's where, based on your testing, you're keeping your sugars as low as you can. If you're not diabetic, keep it so that you never go above 110. If you are diabetic, then we try to keep it so that the before you eat and the after you eat don't go up more than 25-ish. And you just try to keep it as low as possible, but removing the foods that raise it. What does this do? It gives those receptors a chance to rest. When they rest, they can heal. But you can't, if you have a cut on your arm and you keep throwing sand in it or sticking it in dirty water, it's gonna keep hurting, it's gonna keep opening up, and it's not gonna heal. Same thing with insulin receptors. They're constantly bombarded with insulin, inflammatory mediators, foods that may not be serving them, bad fats. And so we create this program. We help people create a program for 30 days. And then you have a transition period. You test to see, are they ready to try to put back foods? Am I ready to put pineapple back in? No, because blueberries made my sugar go up to 135. And at the end of my 30-day metabolic reset first time, I was able to add a little handful of blueberries back. Yay. I didn't push it with the pineapple, right? I mean, just create this plan that people can live with. And the results we're seeing, let me just tell you, are amazing. We're running this right now. And then you get them into a maintenance. What's their maintenance versus my maintenance versus yours? If I have 37, I think, of the 50 known genes that I know of, anyway, for insulin resistance and blood sugar imbalance, I have 37 of them. I'm going to have to be a lot more careful in my maintenance than someone who has none or just a few, that their insulin resistance or their problem was caused by just diet and lifestyle abuse. Mine was a combination of genes plus diet and lifestyle abuse. So I have to be more careful, but that's what you get to do. You get to learn how to do this with these people. So there's 5 stages to what you're gonna do. You're gonna help them to balance their nutrition. We put them on some craving crusher nutrients. You can read the doses in your slides. We help them to phase out the anti-inflammatory foods. There's a whole bunch of them, including the dried fruit and fruit juice, which could be healthy foods, full of nutrition, but not good for everyone. So we help them based on how they're testing. And then we have them move, right? Do little burst training exercises, run up and down stairs, walk if they're debilitated. You know, there's arm exercises. You help them decide on what they should be doing. You help them with low stress. What's your favorite low stress mindfulness practice? For me, I love heart math. I love mini meditations. This is my heart math slide. What is it for you? But it's important that you're teaching them this stuff. It's important that you teach them how to get sleep. I have this book, Burn Belly Fat While You Sleep, and I have a bunch of herbs in there and like ways to figure out why they're not sleeping, how to get them to sleep. A lot of times it's just they're worried. Like they're constantly, the mind doesn't shut down and they can't turn it off. And there's certain herbs for that. There's certain meditations for that. So really getting them to sleep. But the last one is the one that most people forget about, is that timing. Remember we mentioned way back this morning, we talked about leptin and how leptin, it was really important to have the timing spaced right because of the insulin-leptin combination. We've got to space meals. If they're eating every 2 hours, help them to go 2.5 hours between meals. Help them to go 3. Help them to lengthen that. And then if they're eating right before bed, you gradually move that back. But these are critical things, the timing things, how they eat, and also intermittent fasting. There's so much now about that. Some people can, some people can't, but it's an amazing way to reset insulin receptors and get people back on track. So I think that in order for you, me, all of us to stand out, to really succeed as practitioners, there's 3 areas we need to master. One is we have to be able to take care of ourselves. If we're not feeling well, how are we going to be on to really figure this out for other people? And how are we going to be a role model for them? Number 2, you've got to have clinical skills. You have to understand insulin resistance, hormone resistance, how the hormones work in the body, how the digestion works. You need clinical skills. And how the emotional pieces work that Laura talked about. And then you need to know how to market your business, whether it be, on Facebook or on Twitter or just doing local talks in your community or handing out business cards at the supermarket. You've got to be able to do it, and you need to do it in a way that's authentic for you. You can't just go and do it the way this used car salesman down the street is doing it because it doesn't fit your personality. So I think all of these things are what we all need to be doing. We can't just pick one of them and be really good clinically, but nobody knows about us. Or not really be taking care of ourselves and be a good marketer, but not really have the clinical skills. And I see that, believe me, I see that a lot where people don't have the clinical skills and they're just like marketing themselves. They think they're hot, but they don't really know. So we really need to know all of this. So what have you learned so far? Right? We're getting to the end. What have you learned so far, right? We've learned that hormones are king. Queen, right? The master controller is the endocrinology. But the good news is we can control it with the stuff you already know how to do to teach people how to clean up their diet and clean up their lifestyle. We've learned that hormone resistance is a bigger problem than we think. It's not just about, autosomal dominant, crazy genetic stuff. It's really about the subtle stuff that people are doing every day. We learned about interactions between hormones. We learned about how autoimmunity plays in and how the immune system can zap the hormones. We learned a lot about insulin resistance and how insulin resistance is underpinning so many others of these. So what I want to do is ask you a question, right? If you were conventionally trained, say in medical school or nursing school or osteopathic school even, we're taught a certain way and we follow the pack. We follow the pack. We do things the way we've been taught. I hear a lot of people say, I'm not willing to do something I wasn't taught in medical school. But to make this a movement, to change the way healthcare is practiced so it's truly healthcare, you're gonna have to go to a different drummer. All of us here, but we're just a small bunch of fish in this big pond. But the only way you're really gonna do it is to diverge and learn this other stuff so that you can actually make a difference in people's lives. So I'm just going to take a few minutes to just invite you to come into our community and become a certified insulin resistance coach and really master this stuff, because like we said, the insulin is at the heart of everything because it affects all the other hormones. And I think that you would be enjoying being in our community. We have a program called the Insulin Resistance Solution Practitioner Training. And you're going to get access to coaching and implementation on all the little things I taught you about that you need to be doing with people to help them to get well. You can do the modules at your own pace, but we've got another thing you're getting as a bonus actually. You get access to our entire Sweet Spot Solution program so you can go through it yourself and figure out how to get your own stuff under control, but also see how I set it up so you can create these programs. And then we have the opportunity that once you're through and you pass your tests at the end of each module and you do a few cases, that you can become certified and listed in our directory as a certified insulin resistance coach. And then, you know, if you're qualified, apply to be one of our team members, our team coaches, that when we do our blood sugar balancing sweet spot program and we get some number of people who want to have a private coach, that you're in our pool of people that we can call on. So there's a lot of advantages to being here. It's an amazing community. I'm here to support you every step of the way. And it looks like these things are kind of weird, but there's training modules. There's 9 of them. There's 5 months of office hours calls with me, where every month you can come and ask questions about your clients, about the course, about everything. There's downloads and transcripts of everything. So everything you have is audio, video, transcripts, slides, and then done for you materials that are in a section where it's like, okay, it took me decades to do this. You can just take them and do it on your own. So it's like so much extra time that you're saving. Really amazing stuff. This is the kind of thing that I wish I had when I graduated from school 27 years ago, 29 years ago. I had to actually quit my job, go back to school, learn this stuff in a conventional environment, and then learn all the extra stuff on top of it, and then get out and go, okay, now what? Had to create all this. Because I come from a computer science background and my mind works this way and I like systems, I was able to create this, but it took me decades to create all this stuff. So what is it? The modules are foundations and assessments and nutrition and stress management and all the things we talked about before, but we also have implementation strategies. And we also have education and marketing strategies in there. We actually, one of the bonuses we're going to give you is a presentation in a box. But big thing that we're going to give you is we're going to give you 2 seats to our Shine event in the fall, which is all about metabolic disorders and ketogenic diets and intermittent fasting and 3 days of deep dive. We have some amazing speakers, Tom O'Brien, Anna Kabecka, Mike Mutzel, Steph Jackson is going to talk about how to use a ketogenic diet without messing up with your microbiome, which most ketogenic diets do. Who else? I think that's all our speakers. Oh, and Alan Hopkins, Dr. Alan Hopkins, who's going to talk about, you know, the advanced stuff related to labs. So you get 2 free tickets in this. Once you sign up today, you'll immediately get access to a page that says, hey, reserve your tickets, because just because you have them doesn't mean you get in. If we fill up, then you lose them and you have to come next year. Bonus number 2 is that Sweet Spot membership, but you can do it for yourself. You can also invite a friend or a family member to take it, and you can guide them through and get credit towards your certification. So you get this case study that you do, and you can get certified that way. We're going to take you through all of those steps, every single one. You're going to understand how they work, and all you have to do is go to insulinresistancesolution.com. Wait, that's not the right one. It's insulinresistancepractitioner.com. I thought I changed that slide. Insulinresistancepractitioner.com. That will take you there, but it'll take you to this long thing with a video on it, and you're welcome to go there. But Insulin Resistance Practitioner, if you already know that this is something you want to do. This was Jan, who came into our Sweet Spot program many years ago, and she decided she wanted to be she wanted to have a small waist like I did, and she wanted to have muscular arms like I did, and I think she overachieved. And she then went on and said, I want to do this. I want to learn this for my family. And she joined our program, and she was actually our first certified nutritional endocrinology practitioner. So she's been through all of this, and she left us, unfortunately. She came and joined my team for a while, but then she got hired away, and she's working full time and doing yoga and doing insulin resistance programs and all this other stuff. So she created a whole new career for herself, going from brain fogged and a little overweight to just creating a whole new career for herself. And this was Beatrice, who I told you about before. She started out with Hashimoto's, and she didn't expect her Hashimoto's to go away when she got her insulin resistance under control. And now she's gone on to lose even more weight than that. She's down 110 pounds. And she comes back every year to redo the program with us because she wants that motivation. And then this was Alan, who actually came and joined us to help us with marketing. And he said, oh, this program looks good. It looks like I could use it, obviously, right? And he did the program, and that was him just a few months later. 50 pounds, and he went off his thyroid medication too. His doctor said, you don't need this stuff. And he ran out and he didn't take it for a few months. And his doctor said, okay, let's test. He said, you don't need this anymore, right? So these are the kind of amazing things that can happen. Third bonus is what I started to tell you, this blood sugar balancing in a box. I am giving you my PowerPoint slides that you can take and you can use as is. You can change them. You can take my name off of them and put your name on it. It's like, this is a gimme. It's the PowerPoint, not the PDF. You can actually create your own, and it'll save you hours and hours to be able to do that. So that's one of our bonuses. And then the fourth one we call the Vault. And it's basically a compilation of from previous iterations, the various coaching calls and one-on-one type things that, not one-on-one, but group calls that you get. And that's that's all the stuff that you get. So, recap the modules, the 5 online office hours calls, you've got the members only website, you've got access to the Vault, you've got all of this stuff, this done for you stuff, plus this amazing Facebook community where everybody's interacting. We have doctors, nurses, osteopaths, chiropractors, nutritionists, herbalists, who else? We've got all kinds of people on there and interacting and sharing. It's pretty amazing. So I think, if this is something that's calling to you, it's like, yeah, this was a start. You got a lot of great information here. And if you're ready to move forward and really take it to the next level and get certified in this, this would be the place to go. So all the modules and all the bonuses and everything, it's $1,997. However, because you're here, you're already spent like $100 to come here today, I'm going to give you a deal. I'm going to not only take your $100 off, I'm going to take $500 off, and you're going to get the whole program for, whoops, what happened? Yeah, oh, it's just 14, my slides, there you go. I know something weird happened with my slides. It's just $14.97 instead of $19.97. It's all that. And wait, there's more. No, I'm getting tired. So remember that these are the pieces I want you to really master. And so I'm throwing in some extra quick action bonuses that hit each of these areas. So let me just show you. The self-nurturing part, we have a program we call the Body Freedom Foundations. And last year, we offered it last summer for $1,997. And we got people taking it through. They took 7 months to go through. You're going to get that whole program. The only thing you won't get with that is the live calls, because they're over, but you're still going to get all the emails and all the support taking you through those 7 pillars, the freedom pillars for yourself, because you've got to be taking care of you, and we're going to help you to take care of you. And you get access to the Facebook group and all that to get support. So it's insulinresistancepractitioner.com. Quick action bonus number 2. You just got a glimpse of Laura. Laura has some amazing stuff that she's done, and she's taken people through some transformations that have completely changed their practices. I watched it. I watched people before they went to her practice, to her class, and after. And she's got a class coming up. It's online. It's a Zoom class. And it's 10 weeks long, and it's called Dancing with Defenses, Mastering the 5 Personality Energy Patterns. Now, she didn't get a chance to go into those, but I'm posting up so you have an idea of what this is about. But that is selling for $695, and if you sign up with us today at insulinresistancepractitioner.com, we're giving the first 6 of you only it absolutely free. The first 6 of you only. So if you want to get in there, I would highly recommend that you jump in and join it, because that program has transformed so many people's lives. I did it last summer. It was pretty amazing. It's got 5 informational and experiential talks with her, but then it's got 5 integration sessions in a small group with one of her trained coaches. So it's just an amazing thing for you to figure out what is your personality pattern, what is it that, how are you operating, but then how do you identify when your clients are going into that personality pattern themselves, and what do you do? She gave you a glimpse of some of the things, but it's way deeper. It's based on a book called the 5 personality patterns by Kessler. Amazing stuff, absolutely free, only to the first 6 who register. So I would highly recommend that you do that. And then the third quick action bonus, I've never done this before. I just decided to do this late last night. I probably stayed up too late. But I want to meet you guys, and I want to support you in building a business. I never knew I could do what I do and create a business that supports me, my family, and all of our people that we hired. And I'm thrilled to be able to do it. I pinch myself every day to know that I can do this, and I've developed some really good marketing skills in doing it. I normally don't coach anybody in marketing one-on-one, except for people who join our Practice Accelerator group, and that's like $40,000 for a year. But what I'm going to do for the first 10 of you that register, you're going to get an authentic business and marketing strategy session with me. And I think it's priceless, because I can hone in, I can ask you lots of questions. You're going to fill out a practice questionnaire so I get to know you, and I'm going to help you to hone in on some ideas that can really shift your direction and help you to skyrocket your practice. So that at insulinresistancepractitioner.com, that's only for the first 10. Okay, so anybody that signs up today is going to get the body freedom and take care of you. That's a webinar only, workshop only. The first 6 of you are going to get Laura Fine's Dancing with Defenses classes, and if any of you have ever taken it, write into the chat so people know what an amazing deal that is. And then the first 10 of you, I'm going to give a session with me to really go over your business and hone in. Can you tell I'm passionate? Can anybody type it? I'm passionate because the world needs to change. Even on the break, I saw somebody type something in about some advice they got from a doctor that just like, it boils my blood. We need to change it. I've lost family members. I've lost friends. I've seen people suffer, and it's got to change. And we have to be the ones that make it change. We have to make a movement. And as we band together and we create this community, we're getting out there into the greater world and showing what's possible, what's totally possible for your health. So, summary of all the modules. And there's one more thing. The bonuses, there's the 3 main bonuses, which are the Shine Conference and the Sweet Spot and the Blood Sugar Balancing in a Box. Oh, and the Vault. So there's 4. Plus, there's the 3 quick action ones. The live workshop only for the Body Freedom. We sold it last year for $19.97. That alone is worth more than what we're charging you for this program, and that can change your life and create you as the practitioner that you've always wanted to be. The first 6 of you are going to get the Laura Fine course. That's starting up actually on the 29th of June, and you can do it concurrently with insulin resistance because it's working on a different part of your brain. It's not actually working on your brain, it's working on your emotions and your energetics. So not going to feel overloaded. And then the strategy session with me for the first 10 of you. So I'm looking forward to it. And we're throwing in one extra thing. Whenever we do this live, which we usually launch it live once a year, we do extra calls. So we're going to do a kickoff call next week, Monday. I think it's July 1st, to kick everybody off so everybody gets to meet each other. And we get started, and then we're going to have a monthly call for 3 months after that. So 4 monthly calls in addition to the office hours. So you'll be able to get together with me twice a month to ask your questions, to present your cases, to get advice, and to mingle with the other members of the program. And that's it, insulinresistancepractitioner.com. Hopefully this one works. There we go, that worked. I don't know what happened to the last one. Got too late. It's just $14.97. And for what this is, I've looked at other practitioner trainings. I looked at IFM, has a cardiometabolic. People from their cardiometabolic have come and taken our program, okay? Because we go into more depth, we go into more of the nutrition and the implementation and all that. And to do theirs, you have to travel, and it costs a whole lot more than double, probably triple. So insulinresistancepractitioner.com. And I've really enjoyed being here today. I think we're just really right on time. Oh my God, it's exactly 4 o'clock. I don't think I've ever done that before. Like I said 4 o'clock and it's 4, but I'm willing to stay for as long as you need to do some extra questions. So we can stay an extra 15 minutes to do questions.
Lynn says there's a couple of very happy clients about Sweet Spot that may want to.
Oh, the Sweet Spot people, we're going to give them credit towards what they did. So what they need to do is give her their name, and I told you to create a coupon for that a couple of weeks ago. Yeah.
I told about people who want to talk on the chat.
Oh, they want to talk. Oh, I see what you mean. I thought people from Sweet Spot that wanted to join, that they will get a credit. So, and I sent them emails about that. So, oh yeah, pull them on, absolutely. This is what we're going to be working on. This is what we're going to be working on, and you're going to have some happy clients. So I'd love to hear from some of those guys, and then I'm here to answer questions. And I think at this point, so if you know what that link is and you put it in the chat, I can actually turn this off because I was afraid to turn it off before. Can I turn this off? The slides off?
We'll get it back maybe.
Well, I may not need it. I don't need it back because I'm at the end. I would have just hit the button to turn it off and see if it comes down. All right. Yeah, I'm here. What? Who's coming on? Huh?
Lynn?
Lynn? Great.
There she is.
Yep. So,
Turn it around so I can see her.
Elena had raised her hand. So let's see if I can unmute her here.
Awesome.
Letting me unmute her.
Who is it that you just said? I didn't really.
Her name is Elena, E-L-E-N-A, Elena.
Oh, Elena, yeah.
Okay, so Elena, if you can unmute yourself, I tried it on my end.
Scott can probably do it at his end too, because he's host.
Yeah. And there are some people who are in the Sweet Spot that are interested as well. So you said we sent out emails.
I sent out emails, and I think I had a coupon in it, but if not, just take their names, and so we can keep track of the first 6 and the first 10. And if they just tell us and then they actually do it before the end of the day, because we'll send them an email with the coupon if they can't find it, then they'll get credit for their investment in Sweet Spot.
Okay.
Yeah, so it'll be $1,000 instead of $1,500 if you're already in Sweet Spot. If you're in the new Sweet Spot, if you've done it in the past, it's not. Okay, so Elena?
All right. So Elena or Scott, were you able to
I can't spell it again.
E-L-E-N-A.
She's in as a panel.
She's in it as a panelist.
Oh, panelist. I thought it was doing attendees.
And then all you have to do is like say request
Unmute.
or unmute or something. I love looking at that picture. I'm like, now I'm seeing and having the beach behind me.
She's gone.
Is she gone?
I can get her back.
Get her back.
Oh, maybe she's not.
Yeah, so I just want to say that I really appreciate you taking the time out today. I hope this met your expectations. When you look at what we put on the site for you, all those documents and stuff, it's pretty amazing. I'm going to add Laura's, even though I sent that out a few days ago. You may have missed that email. I'll add Laura's stuff right to that page. And then we'll add the videos. It takes Zoom a while, so we have somebody that comes in on Monday morning who will download them, and we'll get those links. And initially, they'll just be the Zoom links, and we'll just put those links up if we get around to it, to put them on our site. Well, we will, because Zoom only holds them for 30 days, so we'll have to then take those links that are Zoom links and then upload them to our server, and then we'll have new links. But it should be seamless to you. And it's done in 3 parts, so it was the first, and then the break, and then the second, and then the break. So you'll have 3 videos that you'll get to look at. And then the audios. We'll make sure that we give you the audios as well. She's gone?
And, yeah, she's gone.
Who else?
So if you would like to speak, you should be able to raise your hand.
Yeah, if you hover your picture, is that how you do it? You hover your picture?
I got somebody here.
Good.
And her name is Christine.
Christine, okay.
Christine McGough.
Hi, Christine.
There. There you go.
Hey, I
Hi.
just got online and paid for everything to make sure I was part of the program,
Yay.
but it didn't have the bonuses listed on there on the page. Is there a way for me to find out if I got those bonuses or how I would take advantage of that?
Yeah, we'll make sure if you just did it now, you probably got them all. So there should be, if you go to that page, it should say at the top special. Does it say at the top special for summer 2019? If not, you might have sent them to the wrong page.
I don't remember seeing that, but I can't go and look on that while being in a chat with you.
Yeah, well, we'll just make sure that you did since you got on here now. Lynn, write her name down.
Doesn't have the quick action bonuses.
Up at the top it should, above. Is that the special page? Yeah, so scroll down. There should be, right? Scroll it down. Let's keep going. Oh, the quick action ones aren't there. No, oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, because they're limited. They're limited time. Yeah, so you'll definitely get the body freedom, and if you just did it, you probably got in on the other two. So we'll make sure that you do. Okay?
Wonderful, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. I look forward to getting to know you.
Thank you. The second question is I am out of town until July 5th on my anniversary trip.
Nice.
So it sounds like I might be missing a phone call. Are those recorded calls that I'll be able to come back?
Everything is recorded. We never do anything unless we record it. It'll be on Zoom probably, and there'll be a phone number if you are in a place where you can just call in as opposed to, but otherwise it will definitely, they're all recorded. And that'll be the kickoff call, the first one. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much. It's been very helpful. You've done a great job.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. I look forward to getting to know you.
Likewise. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Cool.
Okay, let's see who else. Danielle wants to. Danielle actually has been, I think this is her second year in Sweet Spot.
Cool.
Hey, wanted to do this last year. All right, Danielle.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm listening with Danielle for the workshop, but I'm not Danielle, but I've signed up for the program.
Yay! What's your name?
Cheryl Harrington.
Cheryl. Okay. Lynn, write her name down so we make sure that these folks are getting, and we'll link them up for the bonuses. Because we got to get the Laura bonus out right away because it starts next week.
It's C-A-R-O-L.
C-A-R-O-L. Okay, got it. Carol, not Cheryl. Got it. Okay.
And do you need any more information other than my name, or?
Probably, no.
Signed up.
If you signed up and it went through,
Yeah.
and we know,
Yeah.
we'll just make sure that you're getting them. Yeah, and we'll send another email out probably tomorrow. As soon as Laura's are done with all the access, we'll probably pop you right into the Laura sequence that gives you all her stuff, and you're in. So that'd be great.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're-
This is great.
You're welcome. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
I did. Thank you. Bye now.
Bye. Look forward to getting to know you.
Thanks.
Can I share a little bit?
Sure, please do.
Okay, so I just want to share how much this has helped me with my business, my clients. And one of the primary reasons is because it's raised my confidence level. Because, you know, you can see just in this workshop here, is that you learn so much, and you probably know more than medical doctors. And it's because you're learning something different. They learn medicine, and that's what they're taught. But you're taught, what Dr. Marie is sharing, is how to help people actually live their life, not just take a bunch of pills.
Right.
And because that's not what life is about. And this is what you get to do for your clients. And the confidence that you have, they'll feel that. So when they talk to you, they're drawn to that because then they can rest in that. They know that they can trust you to take them to that place that they really want to be, that place they dream about, and you can help them with that. And it just keeps building because you see it happening, and the more you see it happening, it just builds and builds. And this is that part of that dream that Dr. Ely has, talks about happy, healthy people don't make more.
That's right.
And you get to be in this wonderful regiment of students she has. So I know I'm grateful. I had done other schooling, and it wasn't that there was anything wrong with it. It just didn't bring me here. It didn't give me that confidence that I knew what these people needed to hear. And so I just wanted to share that.
Awesome.
In case that's what people, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Share a little bit too about Laura's thing, because that shifted that took you to the next level.
Yeah, did that. This will be actually, I think, my 3rd year doing her program, this Dancing with Defenses program. And it kind of worked, this is why it works so well with yours, because you look at yourself first and you make your own shifts, and you so the way it worked with me is I had concrete blocks, I mean like cement blocks that within me that shattered. One woman that, as I was working through this, she looked at me, she goes, I just heard that. And when those break through, you get to shine through. And again, this is what's part of you bring to your clients. It's apropos that you call it the Sweet Spot program for the clients, because that's what we bring to people. They're missing out on that sweetness in life.
That's right.
And you get to show them the joy of life.
Yeah.
And that's, we almost have no experience with that. And, you get to be that walkabout mate with them, to show them on this path that they can do this. So we're not fixing them. We're showing them how they can love themselves, to balance themselves out.
Thank you. Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. We don't, that whole idea, I'm not a big fan of using the word healer, like I'm a healer. I feel like I am a healer. I'm a healer for me. Lynn is a healer for Lynn. Everybody's a healer for themselves. But what we get to do is we get to help them to bring out that healer and have that healer come out and play and actually heal, right? So I heal, I call myself like a healing facilitator, not a healer.
Yeah. Exactly. Helping people find joy in life. I mean, like you said, you pinch yourself. I pinch myself that I get to do that.
Yeah.
And I have 7 children, I have 6 grandchildren, and I get to live this life that I'm creating that includes them. I don't have to wake up at a particular time and get to an office at a particular time and clock in and clock out. I get to choose my life, and I choose to have this be a part of it so that I can share that same joy for life with other people on whatever path they choose.
Yeah.
And that's the brilliance of all of this. Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
And we know that, some of this stuff's going to sink in, and you're going to go through the materials, and you're going to have questions. And if you've joined the program, you'll have plenty of facility to be able to get in that. But also, we're going to do a follow-up. I'm going to help you with the follow-up. So we'll look at our calendar to see when the best time to do the follow-up is going to be, so that you can come with questions. I don't know if there's any questions still there, or people who wanted to get on and ask questions, but if there's questions that are pertinent to what we've done, or questions about the program, I'm happy to answer them,
Yeah.
For maybe another 5-10 minutes. It's been a long day.
Yeah. Barbara Dunn, I have just unmuted you.
All right.
Hi, yes, I just registered for the program as well. I'm really excited to get
Nice.
started and if I qualified for all of the free bonuses.
Yeah, Barbara, to check it out, Scott. I think he's looking. Yeah, you probably did. I don't know.
There were 6.
There's 6 now? Is she number 6? You're number 6.
She's within the first 6.
You're within the first 6. Beautiful.
Okay, but I missed the one that was for 5, is that correct?
No, there wasn't one for 5. There was one for 10. So you got both.
Awesome.
Yeah, you got both. And then you got the Body Freedom Foundations, which was for everybody that signs up today on the, today. So you got all 3.
I am really excited. I've been type 2 diabetic. That's what I was actually determined to be a long time ago. We're talking about 25 plus years. I've gotten off medication, but need to get my A1C down as well as my fasting. Once I got off meds, my fasting went up.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the answers that I've been looking for, I'm excited to figure out what the issues are. And
Yep.
and then to share it with others.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that we can share it with others, and that's how my healing journey began. I healed myself, and it was like, I can't keep this a secret. I struggled for 2 years trying to figure out what was wrong with me, and finally got it together. And like, I can't keep this a secret. So.
Oh, that's awesome. I have people asking me questions now because of the improvements I've made, but I don't have enough information to help them do what they need to do for them.
You will, and you'll even have that presentation you can practice on them.
Well, thank you so much. I'm just so excited. And this is not the first program that I've looked at, but it really has connected with where I am and what I think I need
Beautiful.
to do. So,
Well, I look forward to getting to know you too, Barbara.
all right. Have a good
Thanks.
day.
You too. Anybody else?
Okay, there's, just looking at the chat, there's a couple of things that we should maybe clarify. This is a self-paced program. It's not like you sign up now and you have 6 months or 9 months to finish and that's it. And so again, that was the beauty of it for me, because I could live my life and not have the pressure of filling it, of fitting it in between that, and that.
Yeah.
Treat stress management.
Yep, and you could, if you are got a lot of free time and you don't have a lot of kids to take care of and grandkids and whatnot, you could do it. You could do it in 6 weeks. Most people don't, but
Yeah.
you could finish it in 6 weeks because it's self-paced. And once you finish one module, you get access to the other. You get an email that says, "Okay, now start here," and then you still have 5 months to come to the calls and get the support.
The live calls,
Yeah.
right?
And you get the
And
two, you also
yeah,
get the
that's
ticket to Shine. You get 2 tickets to Shine. So what you do is you sign up for one, and when you sign up, we'll have a pop-up that says, "Hey, do you want to grab your ticket now?" And then we'll send you an email that says, "Here's how to sign up your friend or loved one." What?
Right.
Oh, it's September 27th to 29th. Yeah, in Austin.
Yeah.
It's in beautiful Austin.
Yeah. Yeah, it is beautiful at this place we're at.
Oh, it's a beautiful resort. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, do you want to share with them about what the steps are for certification? It's not just taking the course and passing the exam.
Yeah, so we want to make sure that if we're endorsing, and it's not really endorsing, but we're saying we certified you, that you actually have the skills. So there's a test at the end of each module, and I think there's a master test at the end. But we want you to do some cases, and that's why we give you access to our sweet spot, because you can actually take a loved one through it, share with them how to go through it, take your mother through it, take your brother, somebody in your family, and log those cases. And we have specific requirements, and I don't know exactly because I get them confused between this and NEPT, but you basically get to actually show and practice and do that. And you might want to add to that if you have more information. I don't remember exactly how many cases there are.
It's 2.
2 cases, okay.
It's 2 cases, and So I'll add to that by saying one of the reasons we do this is because, well, you saw or heard Lisa and Susan. So you saw this interaction with a health coach and a medical practitioner. So this puts you in that realm. If you can do a case study, you know how to make notes that you can share with a medical practitioner of some sort and show them the work that you do. And I listen to the case study recordings, and there's many times I've replied back to people saying, hey, this part was great. This is the part that you might want to work on. It's not that we hold you back from doing it, but that's the kind of feedback that can help you grow into the brilliant practitioner you are.
That's right. We want you to be the best you can be because you're a reflection of our school and our training. So, we teach you how to put a case together in a way that would be acceptable in the medical community. We give you that. We give you some recordings that you can watch or listen to of other people doing it, so you get a sense of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other little tidbit too, is if you've been board certified by the National Association of Nutrition Professionals, you can use this course for your continuing education units with them.
That's right.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, that's definitely a good thing. Cool.
Yeah. All right, so that was all the kind of a compilation of all the questions that are on here.
I don't know if Chris is still here, but she asked if the 4-phase plan that's part of the course.
4-play. Yeah. Oh yeah, that's all in the sweet spot. We take them through. Yeah.
A couple have asked if they can just join Sweet Spot still.
If they want to, they can. You will have missed some of the live calls, but you can definitely, because that's self-paced as well, so you can definitely join Sweet Spot. Give them the URL for that.
And how long will the downloads be available for the course?
For the IRSPT course, indefinitely.
At least a year.
We have, it's at least a year, but we don't have any plans to take them down.
You can't commit for lifetime.
We can't commit to lifetime legally because it's just not not real, right? Whose lifetime?
Sharon asked if you have to complete the program within 9 months.
No.
It's self-paced.
Great. And the other piece to the download is that you can download them. I have an external hard drive, and I just download everything on there. And what's nice about that is if I'm like on vacation or if I'm just going for a run or something, I can just listen to it on my electronic device. So
and most programs don't let you download the videos, and I've talked to colleagues about, why do you let them download your videos? That's your proprietary information. Like, they paid me. They get access to it. So I don't want you to share that. I don't want you to send it. It's pretty hard to send somebody a video because it's if you download it, it's like, you know what I mean? It's too big. So I recommend that you download everything, and like Lynn said, put it on an external hard drive and put the audios on your cell phone, your iPad, stuff like that. It's funny, last year when I was at Shine, this happened a couple of times actually, I got to Shine and I was going for a little run, and I see somebody running past me, and she stopped me and goes, hey, listen to this. And I'm like, I didn't recognize her. She takes her thing out of her ear and she puts it in my ear, and she was listening to me while she was running. I was running. It was very cool. So that's what people do. Then they listen to it over and over because it takes repetition for this stuff to sink in. I don't know this stuff off the top of my head because I started yesterday or I started last year. It's because I've been doing it over and over and over again and teaching it and working with clients and explaining to them for decades. Right? And so it just takes time. And the more you listen and the more it sinks in, the more it becomes part of you and it becomes part of your life, and you get to live the life and you get to teach people. It's really pretty amazing. I love it.
Yeah. And Janet asked to repeat the credits. It's National Association of Nutrition Professionals, NANP.
Yep.
And that's the continuing education units that she would get. And let's see, I was looking here. Oh, yeah, she did that. She did that already, or Scott did that already. And you know, if once you've gotten your certification with us, because we regularly have people who say, hey, I live in Arizona, do you have anybody that's certified?
Yeah.
And so we can say, sure, you know, here's Sharon. She's gone through our program. And again, because we get to know you, we can say that with certainty.
And we're planning our new website will be up in, I would guess, 3 to 4 months is my goal. Keep my fingers crossed, at least by the time we do Shine. And that's where we'll have a section to feature the certified practitioners.
Yeah.
Cool.
Right.
All right, guys. Oh, Scott has one more
So I
thing.
think we should share Leia's comments, Lynn.
Who?
Leia Jaffe.
Oh, Leah, yeah.
Oh, Leah? Okay. Yeah, so, yeah. She's, Leah, you know Leah, she's been on some of our calls.
She's been on a lot of our calls.
Yeah, and Leah lives in the UK, so know that we're pretty international. But she said, can we convey her appreciation to you, because the studying she has done, she's in the digestive mastery and sweet spot, has turned her health and life around in 6 months.
Wow.
And yeah, she says we are all a work in progress, of course, but now she can see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Yippee. And then, you know, when you turn your own health around, then you're more available to help others, right? I couldn't have helped others when I was in the state that I was in, where I was brain foggy and, you know, living on coffee and donuts. I couldn't help others in that state.
Phase 1.
What?
Phase 1.
Phase 1. Well, we have those 3 phases, right? And you can do them concurrently, but if you don't address all 3, I find that you can't be an effective practitioner. You can be taking care of you and you can have the clinical skills, but if nobody knows about you, your practice isn't going to grow. And, you know, all of those, they just need to be together. And that's what we call it, our unstoppable practitioner formula. We'll go into more of that at Shine. We have a whole beautiful map that you can use and lay it out.
So Christina was asking about, she's a gynecologist in Baltimore.
Nice.
And so she was asking if there was anybody there who does this work already, so they could work together. But
In Baltimore?
Christina
Yeah, we've got Tony there, right?
I know.
And Cassandra. And
Yeah. But the other thing to consider is that we can work virtually as well.
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We do most of our work virtually. I do most of my work virtually. And I love Zoom because I could sit there face to face with people and feel like I'm there, right? You obviously can't do OBGYN virtually because a little challenging, but you can coach people virtually.
Right, exactly. If you're just doing the counseling, you don't need to have that hands-on.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to pass. Yeah, but this is the kind of possibility you can have working with people.
Oh yeah, Chet's in that area too.
Chet's
Remember
in
Chet started.
Pennsylvania.
Oh, she's
Philly?
No, she's in New Hampshire, isn't she?
Chet?
No, not Chet.
No, Chet's in that same area there. She's in Maryland or Delaware, I think it is. Chet is she's an MD. She and her husband have a very, very busy practice. And she thought she was going to put all this stuff into practice, and she knows it, but she has actually started working with one of our other coaches in the program to work with her to do some of the health coaching pieces. So yeah, they're really creating a great practice there.
Yeah, and this is just all the different possibilities. I know I've been in conversation actually with a dentist, because just like with the eyes, the mouth can tell you so much.
Oh yeah.
So, you know, the possibilities of what you can do are endless.
Yeah. And it starts with having the confidence in yourself, right? And some of that confidence comes from education. Like if you don't know, then how are you going to have confidence, right? So you have to understand how to actually do the stuff, how to actually guide somebody through an insulin resistance reset. But it's, you know, I say sometimes it's not rocket science. It's hard, but it's not like you have to go and, right? You can learn this stuff if you're dedicated. It is kind of like rocket science, though.
Chad and husband are in Wilmington, Delaware.
Oh, they're in Wilmington, Delaware. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Cool.
And we have another OBGYN in NEPT, Chandra.
Yeah, not Dr. Higgins.
Yep.
And she's in Texas.
All right, guys. Thank you.
Right.
Much appreciation for you to spend the day with me. Much love and admiration for you being on this mission. It is a mission. And I think that when we band together, we create a movement and a mission and a movement, and then we make change. And we see the world totally change around us, so that in the future, when anybody goes to the doctor for any reason, you know, mom takes her kid in, whether it's for a stuffy nose or ADD, the doctor is asking, what are you feeding this kid, and what are they watching, and how can we get them, and let's get them outdoors, and let's get them off of this and onto this, and that when we go to restaurants, it's not like we're sitting there going, where's the healthy food? No, every restaurant has it. That's the world I want to live in, and that's the world, the legacy I want to leave my kids. So I plan to be around for at least another 100 years. So we can make a lot of changes in that century together. So let's just do it. And you know, much love and appreciation. Thank you, Lynn, and thank you to the whole team for being here today. I appreciate it.
You know, you just mentioned being 100. There was a woman who's 103 who just won a gold medal in a 100-meter dash.
Oh my gosh.
So,
No, I didn't say I was going to be 100. I said I was living for at least 100 more years.
Right. So
Yeah, that's 163 for the record.
Yeah. So there you go. You can easily do this then, right?
Uh-huh. Yeah. All right. Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.
Ended. Well done. That was really terrific. Years.